Welcome back, crew. It's a bit late, but today we're going to be wrapping up our November game of the month, Savage Worlds, with our review of the system. So we're going to be going over our roses, thorns, and buds. And for those who aren't familiar with the terms, I got them from my favorite D&D podcast, Not Another D&D podcast. And basically, roses are what you liked, buds are what you're excited for with the system in the future, and thorns are things that maybe just didn't click with you didn't like as much. So we're going to break down the system, go over some things we learned during our live play, as well as just kind of our dive into the system throughout the month of November, as well as even a few things you could take away from this system to other games you play, whether it be 5e, Pathfinder, or any TTRPG you're rolling dice with. So join us for that. And as it's December 15th at the time of this video, no spoilers here, but we're not going to have a December game of the month. Holidays between scheduling with my players and just me having a crazy busy time at the moment, which just wasn't a good fit for us. We decided to take the holidays off, but that doesn't mean there's going to be a lack of videos. So stay tuned. We're going to be revisiting some of the games we reviewed earlier this year and do some additional content for them. So definitely keep an eye out if you enjoy Savage Worlds. We've got a video coming up for that. We're going to be doing a little bit more content with aliens. I loved that one. And probably Blades in the Dark and maybe Lancer too. So stay tuned for those ones as we take another look into the systems that came before. But let's get back into it. Savage Worlds, check out the live play. That was a blast. I'll put a link down in the description. I really enjoyed it. We're going to start with the roses for the system. One of my favorites, and you probably saw this from the first impressions, it's just a really cool thing I like. Exploding dice is a fun mechanic. Even like with virtual, where it kind of rolls it for you, it's just a fun thing to have something just kind of keep going and going and going, especially with the dice god smile upon you, and you can just keep rolling and rolling and rolling. I think we got once to a 21 off of a D4, which is just crazy. And I think that's a fun system. And even for games in the past we've reviewed, like the Power Rangers system, I love exploding dice. I think they're a fun mechanic, and especially when you're in person too, and you keep rolling that dice. It kind of makes I liked it for online because it makes it go quicker, but there's nothing that beats just keep rolling and rolling and rolling and get ridiculous results at the end. So that's really cool. That's a fun system. I wish more games would adopt it. I know it. The hard thing, we'll touch on this during the Thorns, it does like skew balance and kind of throws it completely away. Not throw it. It makes it more difficult to balance, I'll say, but it's just a fun mechanic. I think players, even DMs, can have some fun and get into it. So really cool on that side. Alongside that, I love the bennies mechanic. We went over a little bit more in our mechanics overview, so I'm not going to touch on the details of it. But it's still really cool, and for anybody that's coming from 5e, it's pretty much considered inspiration, and you can do different things with it as well. But the fun thing I liked with this, especially as somebody that's always on the Game Master side of the screen, is you get some for the Game Master as well as some of your key NPCs. A lot of times you can have a really cool NPC and just have them roll terribly and just not convey the image you'd wanted or the intensity of the scene that you needed. And having your own inspiration you can pull from your own bennies, I should say, is really cool and definitely a fun piece with this system. So those are definitely kind of two of my ones that stood out immediately. Going through the system as itself, though, because one of the really big things with Savage Worlds, and you'll see me say this a lot during this video, is it's so customizable. It's an open system that you could really tweak to the style of game that you want to play, and they did a fantastic job with that. And one of my first roses for it is how well you can go through and tweak it to any age of game you want to run. If you wanted to run a fantasy sword and sorcery game, you could run that right out of the box. If you wanted to run a modern guerrilla warfare game, kind of similar to what we did with our live play, you can run that. You can even run sci-fi. It's so cool to have one system or frame of reference for a system that you could tweak to so many different settings without feel like you're breaking it. And that's truly one of the strengths of the Savage World systems, and definitely why they have so many variety of settings and games you can play utilizing the rule set. So huge rose for that. We did modern this the first time, but I usually run sci-fi or fantasy. So if I revisit it, we'll probably go to sci-fi or fantasy. Those are my two favorites and definitely the ones I'm strongest running. But I wanted to mix it up a little bit because I rarely ever do anything modern, and I thought, hey, they've got good rules for it. Let's give it a go. And I really felt the rules met the style, the setting I was hoping to build. So shout outs to them for that. That's probably the biggest rose that's not just getting to roll dice, which I like. So outside of that, kind of going along with the openness, the customizableness of the system is the character builder. Their character builder is just so open. If you've watched this channel before, you know I love classless systems where you can just build what you want, and that's what Savage Worlds is. I got new RPG creators, go classless. I know it wouldn't work for every system, but it's just so much fun to be able to have a points or a number of different things you can select and build out exactly what you want your PC to do and not feel hemmed in by a class. And not only can you do that with Savage Worlds, you can do it across the ages, as we mentioned. You could build a modern mercenary just as well as you could build a casting wizard using their rules. And they bring in the powers, the feats, the edges, I should say. This is different things you could do with your skills and all of that. And they blend in seamlessly. And the crazy thing, too, with because I'm a huge Mutant Masterminds fan. If you've watched the channel, you know that. And they've got a classes system, too. But the nice thing with Savage Worlds, comparative to them on that side, is I built a character probably, you watched the video, I think 20 minutes. It was easy to go through, build that character, and find what we needed. And it doesn't take a huge time sink, and it's not something you have to really get used to, which some classes systems can be a little crunchy, and it takes a while to get used to. So shout out to them for making one where you feel like you can build exactly the PC you want to have within the frames of the system, without having to have like a ridiculously complex character design. So really another big rose on that side. Overall, I wrote this in, but I've kind of said it a lot. It's just such a versatile base system, and it's just really cool kind of what you can do with it. And they had so many rules in there that we didn't touch on, which we're going to get into the Bud side of it a little bit later. But it's just so well fleshed out, and there's just so much you can do with the system to build your own game. Like if you're a DM and you're like, or a game master, I should say, and you're looking for a system that you could really kind of tweak and make your own to your setting, Savage World is definitely one of the biggest ones I'd recommend versus trying to tweak something that may not fit or you'd have to break it to fit. So really big kudos for that. And kind of the last rose fits into this side, but there's just so many different settings. There's so much community as well as company support for building out new settings and having new settings looks. Because just within the base company, you've got Rifts, which is a sci-fi, or kind of a blend of everything, but sci-fi, we'll say initially. You got Deadlands, not Deadlands. You've got the Old West game, which I'm blanking on the name of it right now, which I've played once before too. As well. You've got the Superhero Companion, which I'm going to be running a game with soon because I love superhero stuff. There's just so much out there with it, and it just has so many different ways you can play it with using a familiar rule set once your table learns it. Because that's the hard thing sometimes, and I play a new game each month, but just having people pick up a new system and learn the rules, if they're not into that type of thing, can be stressful. So this is one of those ones you can have them learn the rules and then just learn various setting tweaks, which I think is a great boon out there for game masters trying to recruit for players, because if you're not in that 5e Pathfinder space, it can be rough finding new players. So kudos to them on that side. So those are the big roses. A couple of the buds we'll talk about, and remember, buds are things I'm excited to try out in the future. There's a couple cool rule sets that the book goes over we didn't get to bust out. One of the biggest, you've watched the live play, you can tell, a little bummed and relieved, I'll say. We didn't get to bust out the chase rules. The system has a really cool fleshed out chase system that seems like it's fun to play, but also kind of like makes it feel like a chase. And I like that for them. 5e has some chase rules, but sometimes it doesn't feel the most fun, for lack of a better way to put it. These ones looked fun, and I'm looking forward to having another game when I can try them out. On a similar guideline, the mass combat rules. I've got mass combat rules in the system. I appreciate them including that in. That's something I'm excited to try out with them later as well, to just see kind of how it plays and how everything functions on that side. My last bud on this one too is I just want to try out some other settings, like the Superhero Companion being the biggest. I already bought the book for it, so that's going to be stay tuned for that. But there's just so many different things that go along with it, and I'm looking forward to kind of having a familiar rule set and going into different settings and styles of gameplay and seeing how the system shakes up and performs. So definitely something to keep an eye out for the channel for the future, and hopefully we'll have some fun content on that. Also, so those are kind of the buds for the systems. Few thorns. One of them being, and this was a little bit surprising, and if you watch the live play, you'll see I forgot a couple of the rules. And this one, because I always, the way I heard it, was a little bit faster paced, and it is a fast paced game, but it does have a pretty good rule set to it. This really isn't, I shouldn't say it's a thorn, it's just something I wanted to point out, and the thorn section seems like the biggest, or the best spot to put it into, there's a good set of rules with this game, and it does come with a little bit of complexity. I got a scale of 1 to GURPS, it's nowhere near GURPS, but it does have some things to go over. Definitely as you play it more, you'll be able to pick it up. But just coming after, I've come off a streak of rules light or kind of rules moderate systems, and this is a little bit closer to kind of a high moderate, I'll say, for it. So this is a shout out on that side. Does have some good rules to it, and does some things you'll have to remember and get used to as you play it. One of them kind of getting into the actual, or the real Thorns, I should say. I'm a little bummed by the lack of monster support, or enemy support, I should say. They've got some in the core rulebook, which is cool. Definitely, I used some of them myself. But it does, at least from what I saw and kind of reaching out to others in the Discord, it does require a little bit more of the GM kind of building out their own monsters, which isn't hard to do. But sometimes it's nice just to be able to plug and play a monster or a bad guy or whatever you want to call them. So that's a minor thorn for me on that side. And then my last thorn, and this is something that's kind of talked pretty often in the SWADE communities, combat is a little more up in the air. It'd be harder to balance, we'll say, because due to exploding dice and not like a hard CR system or something like that, combat is more of for the game master designing it a gut feel, but also left up to the dice, because if those dice start exploding, you can get pretty nasty. So you can kind of one shot a character depending on how the dice hit and how their armor stacks up and how everything goes. So just a little a thorn on that side, especially if you're playing in a long form campaign. That could be, depending on the style of campaign you're running, if you're wanting to run kind of a more gritty life is how you play it campaign, I think that'll fit really well with. But sometimes I know, especially with some newer players, they get really attached to their new PCs, and that could definitely be something you'd have to watch out for, balance, or try to balance for, or just be aware of, and make sure you convey in a session 0 that you could die pretty easy here. So a thorn, but definitely a thorn, just more just because I love having combat be balanced to exactly where I want it to, and where there's just a little bit more randomness, a little bit more RNG here. So take that as you will, and kind of just note that for your style of gameplay. But overall, those are the only thorns I had. This is just a fun system. I'm looking forward to running more of it in the future, especially with that superhero companion. One of my kind of small goals with this channel is I want to play and review all of the different superhero systems. So SWADE will probably be next on the list. We've got the Champions one coming up too, but with me already knowing these rule sets decently, it'll be easy to kind of jump into the superhero companion on that side. But great system, highly recommend you check it out, especially some of like the rules section they have in the back in regards to chasing and mass battles. That's actually something for you could kind of tweak and kind of rebuild it to other systems as well. Like you could do it for 5e or Pathfinder. It's going to take some tweaking. It's going to have a little bit of a work on your part, but I think they really did a good job of fleshing them out and making them fun. One other thing I'll say that could be a fun way if you wanted to really change a system up, is I liked how I didn't think I'd like it at first. I think I said that I put it as a potential thorn in my first impressions video, I think. But it's actually fun their way they do initiative, with you kind of drawing a new card each turn and getting a different order based off of that. I think that's fun for certain games, and that's something you can take away to other systems as well if you wanted to have a little bit more random and not have and kind of show the kind of the chaoticness of a battle by drawing those cards out versus like for 5e rolling initiative or Pathfinder initiative. Just got to keep it a little bit more up in the air. So I thought that was cool. But overall, that's it for the Savage World system. Stay tuned this month. There'll be a little bit more content for them, as well as Blades, Alien, and probably Lancer as well. So keep an eye out for December as we're just kind of revisiting some of our favorites. But make sure to come back in January when we're kicking off our new game of the month. I'm not going to spoil it yet because I'm hoping my book gets here before January. So it may be a different one, but there's a fun one I'm really excited for, just as long as shipping cooperates with me. So fingers crossed. I'll let you guys know in January if it is, and if not, we'll touch on what it could be, and that'll definitely be one that's down the line too. But Thank you guys for tuning in. If this is your first time here, drop a like, drop a subscribe. Each month we pick a new game of the month to review how to build a PC, core mechanics, something fun with the system. This is a real in-depth dive to get more people out there playing new systems and just exploring the wider world of TTRPGs. So drop that like, drop the subscribe. We'll be back here each week. And until next time, folks, I hope everybody has a great holiday season. Merry Christmas if you celebrate it. And definitely stay tuned for what we're doing next. See you guys later.